I want to talk to you guys about this plan by the Turkish government to build a canal which would essentially be an alternative to the Straits of Turkey. Now, the Straits of Turkey consist of two straits. You have the Dardanelles, which leads right into the Sea of Marmara, which goes right into the Aegean Sea, which leads right into the wider Mediterranean Sea. And then you have the Bosphorus, which goes right into the Black Sea. Turkey wants to build a canal which would give it direct access into the Sea of Marmara and the Black Sea without having to go through the Bosphorus or the Dardanelles. Now, the Russians do not like this because if the Turks build this canal, the Turks could then bypass what is known as the Montreux Agreement. The Montreux Agreement goes back to 1936, and it came out as a result of the Turks wanting to remilitarize the Straits because after World War I, the Turks were amongst the losers, and the victors told the Turks, "You cannot have a navy in the Straits anymore." And this, obviously had something to do with controlling the trade routes, and the Turks were not allowed to have a navy on the Straits. But you had the rise of fascist Italy. The Italians invaded Abyssinia, and then you also had the rise of Nazi Germany, and the Germans rejected the Treaty of Versailles. And so the Turks said, look, you have the Germans rejecting Versailles, and you have fascist Italy on the rise, and they have just invaded Abyssinia. We are really not that secure, and we want to have the right to have a naval presence on our straits. So the British had to concede to this because the British were terrified that the Turks were going to side with the Nazis. Because if the British did not acquiesce to Turkish demands, the Turks would have sided with the Nazis. And also, if the Turks were not allowed to have a naval presence, the British were worried that there would be no sort of hindrances to the Soviets just taking over the Black Sea and ruining the trade routes for the British, and thus being a huge impediment to their commerce. And the British also understood that if they did not have the Turks as a neutral people in the war against Nazi Germany, that the Germans could just use those straits to put their navy right into the Black Sea. And so the British made those concessions to please the Turks so that the Turks could be a neutral people during the Second World War. And it actually was effective because during the Second World War, the Germans were not allowed to use the Straits. The Germans could not use the Straits to put their navy in the Black Sea. And so the Germans had to transport their naval ships on land into the Black Sea. So it greatly hindered the German Navy. So it was actually very effective for the British to make that concession to the Turks. Now, part of, other than allowing the Turks to remilitarize the Straits, part of the Montreux Agreement was that there would be limits for how many naval ships from non-Black Sea countries could use the Straits, and that limit was based off of weight. So one Navy ship under the Montreux Agreement cannot exceed 10,000 tons. And then the aggregate weight limit is, I want to say, 30 or 31,000 tons. And this rule still applies today. In fact, during the 2008 war between Russia and Georgia, the Americans wanted to send in a naval hospital ship through the Bosphorus into the Black Sea to provide aid to victims of the war, medical aid. And Georgia being a Black Sea country, you have to get this naval ship through the Bosphorus into the Black Sea. Well, this hospital naval ship was, I want to say, around 85,000 or so tons. And the Turks said, sorry, that exceeds the limit that is specified by the Montreux Agreement. So we cannot allow this ship access into the Black Sea. And the Americans could not get this ship in. So the Turks have a lot of leverage through the Montreux Agreement, but also the Russians have a lot of leverage as well through the Montreux Agreement. because the Montreal Agreement limits the number of naval ships only from non-Black Sea countries. So through the Montreal Agreement, Russia has a lot of freedom to maneuver their navy within the Black Sea, and Turkey also has a lot of power as well because it controls the straits. It's within their country, and through the Montreal Agreement, it can control how many naval ships from non-Black Sea countries can use the straits. So the two most powerful forces in the Black Sea comes from Turkey and Russia. Now, the Straits of Turkey are extremely important strategic trade routes. About 1/5 of the world's wheat has to go through the Straits of Turkey. And also about 3/4 of the wheat that is exported from Black Sea countries like Ukraine also has to go through the Straits, has to go through the Bosphorus, has to go through the Dardanelles to get into the Mediterranean Sea. So whoever controls the Straits of Turkey has its hand on the world, so to speak. I mean, you have you're wielding a tremendous amount of power, and if you're going to want to have an empire, you're going to have to control the Mediterranean. You're going to have to control the route into the Black Sea. So with the Montreal Agreement, Russia has a tremendous presence in the Black Sea, and it doesn't have to be impeded by the naval force of some NATO country, except for Turkey, of course, because Turkey is a Black Sea country, and Turkey controls the straits. But Russia likes the fact that the Montreal Agreement limits the amount of naval ships from non-Black Sea countries that can use the straits to get into the Black Sea. Now, with this canal, the naval force of some country that's not part of the Black Sea can go right from Turkey into the Black Sea and just mess up the Russians' operation. So let's say Turkey and Russia have huge tensions, where they already have tensions, but let's say it gets worse. And let's say Russia joins forces with Hungary, and the Hungarians have a navy. I mean, right now, Turkey is playing a huge role in revamping the military of Hungary. Turkey can allow the naval force of an ally that it has to go right through the Bosphorus into the Black Sea to scare the Russians, to act as to establish a naval position against the Russians. So, of course, the Russians don't like this because it ruins their control. But the Turks love this idea because it gives them power to allow the naval forces of other countries that it has alliances with to go right into the Black Sea. It could be Germany, it could be the United States, it could be Hungary. So why is Turkey doing this? It's an obvious geopolitical maneuver. Turkey's talking about, well, it makes trade a lot more convenient because, the Bosphorus isn't exactly the most widest strait, and it clogs up a lot, and a lot of commercial ships have to wait their turn. Also, plus, before I forget, the Montreal Agreement allows for commercial ships to go through the Straits of Turkey without any sort of hindrances, regardless of what flag they are under. But with naval ships, that's where the limits come. But the reality is that this is a geopolitical maneuver. It's a geopolitical maneuver. I mean, Turkey, the Straits of Turkey have been used for a very, very long time. Okay, the Straits of Turkey have been used since for God knows how long. Okay, for a very, very long time. Why all of a sudden they have to build this canal? It's a geopolitical move. It's a way to one-up the Russians. It's a way to give Turkey leverage over the Black Sea. Because remember, Russia invaded Crimea back in 2014. Crimea has a very large Turkish Muslim population, the Crimean Turks. Crimean Tatars. They're Turkic. They speak Turkish. They're Muslim, just like people in Turkey. And Erdogan wants to use that population as a proxy against the Russians. We are witnessing the presaging events leading up to a war between the Turks and the Russians. Most people, I don't think, really even see this. But Turkey and Russia have been historically enemies, and they've had numerous wars against each other. And the Russians have won every single time, so I don't really expect the Turks to be friendly to the Russians anytime soon. And this canal will give, if it's built, but this canal will give Turkey the upper hand. It's going to give access to whoever it has to whoever it has a military alliance with to go right into the Black Sea. So this is really a sign that war is coming, and it's a sign that there's going to be a war between Turkey and Russia. And who knows? They may begin as Stalin and Hitler began. They'll be friends for a bit, but then eventually they're just going to become enemies because historically that's always been the case. Anyway, you guys just heard some theology. God bless.